All right, you guys, this is part 3 of the interview with Ella Bruce. If you missed parts 1 and 2, you can go back and listen to those to form a complete picture of this full interview, which I broke into multiple parts. And this is part 3 of the episode with Ella Bruce. There's so many cool topics that I want to dig into, but you and I were just chatting before about keto versus carnivore, and there's so many fascinating aspects to it. And I think one of the coolest things that we have both found is that people think of carnivore, in some cases keto too, because my keto was always carnivore-ish, you know, because I didn't do all the other keto foods. I always did just like meat.
Or like, I suppose, modified Atkins, you know what I mean? Like, I suppose modified Atkins is its core thing from like the 1970s. So it's very like meat-based, whole food, meat-based keto.
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
like the high fat variation. Yeah.
I always like, especially the last few years, my approach to keto was just like meat and low starch veg. So for me to go to carnivore was just like, not having the asparagus or the, you know, cauliflower, cabbage, like the salad, whatever on the side, and just having more meat. But people really tend to think of that as a very restrictive diet. Like the average person would think of it as restrictive. And yet you and I have both really related on the fact that we find it to be so incredibly freeing.
I think restriction is a mindset. So going to bed at 9 o'clock because you're forced to is restrictive. Going to bed at 9 o'clock because you're getting, like, you're my age now and I'm getting old and I want to go to bed, you know, going to bed at 9 o'clock isn't restrictive, you know, so the same thing is restrictive from one side, but it's not from the other. And I think that's really pertinent when we're talking about dietary choices, because the way that you think about your diet really reflects on how you feel about it. And since, you know, we're emotional creatures, you know, how you feel about it really controls whether or not you stick to it. And one of the things I talk about quite frequently with clients is whether or not you are a abstainer or you're a moderator. So, you know, the kind of person, sorry?
I do too. It's like one of my recurring topics on the podcast.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll breeze right over it then. But, you know, I feel like people like us, we're probably abstainers. You know, it's less stressful, it's less restrictive for us to not be like, oh, I can only have a tiny little bite and that's it. You know, whereas for other people, the idea of cutting out in a food group, whether that's carbohydrates or anything that isn't meat, for example, then, you know, that seems overly restrictive. But, you know, interestingly enough, you know, it's overly restricted to cut out vegetables, but it's not overly restricted to cut out meat.
Yeah.
You know, like that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I love all the memes that have been going around, especially this January, about people saying like, you know, when I was eating Cheetos and tubs of ice cream and Snicker bars all day, no one cared. Now that I'm doing keto, everyone thinks I'm going to die. It's like,
yeah.
It's like, it's so backwards. But yeah, when I first learned about the abstainer moderator thing from Gretchen Rubin, I actually had her on the podcast because I'm such a big fan of hers. And she does low carb, which is pretty amazing. But the one thing that fascinated me is why, for me, this lifestyle is so easy. And when I learned that I'm an abstainer and that for a moderator, if you tell them they can never have one thing ever again, that will make them nuts. Just the idea that they could never touch, you know, sugar again, or maybe whatever it is that certain thing, they could never have it again is just too much. Whereas there are also people who could have 1 or 2 squares of dark chocolate or a tablespoon of nut butter or a few nuts and just like walk away. And then there's people who are like on the other side of that going like, how do you do this sorcery? Like, there's no way I could ever do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, like, it's to the point where like almond butter isn't allowed in my house. That's just not a thing. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes, coconut butter.
Coconut butter? I've never tried it. Is it good?
It's amazing, but because it's a coconut too, but it's that it's all of those foods like nuts and dairy and nut butters, they're all growth promoting foods, right? So they light off such a reaction for me and my brain that is like, yes, like store up on this, because, you know, we need to fatten up, and the body always wants to do that. And those foods are just that combination of the fat and the carb together with some salt is like deadly. And everyone knows. I mean, nut butters are probably the most common thing that people can't just have one, you know, tablespoon or a few nuts, or dairy.
Well, I mean, they're also quite high in polyunsaturated fats in general, which, I mean, if you actually look at the satiety effects of various fatty acids, polyunsaturated fats tend to be the least satiating and also the most likely to contribute to adiposity, you know, like hyperphagia, fat growth. So it's really not surprising in many ways, you know, that like A, they make you want to eat more, B, they don't keep you full, and C, anything you do eat is going to get turned to body fat. So it's kind of like the trinity of suck it.
Yeah. And dairy, I found it so interesting that it is, I mean, you think about breast milk too, but it is one of those foods that promotes that as well. And, you know, it's so interesting how most people will say, like, I can't just have a slice of cheese. Like, that's just not, you know, satisfying. And it's interesting to me that these are all foods that really, you know, tend to fatten us up. And it's the same with fruit. And that those would be things that we would maybe have more of in the summer to fatten up or prepare for winter. But well, anyway, you are one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter. I started following you, I think maybe like a year or more ago. And I was so impressed with your physique and how fit you are, and that you do, you know, a high protein diet. So for anyone who is listening who hasn't come across you on Twitter yet, or your work, maybe you could tell us a bit of background on you and how you came to find this whole wild high protein keto.
So I mean, it's been a journey. So I fell in love with bodybuilding well before I found, you know, carnivore or keto or anything else like that. And even before that, I'll take another step back. So I was a fat girl in high school, so very obese. I was about 110, 120 kilos, or like 240, 250 pounds, so like heavy, big girl. And
you're tall too, so you must have felt big. I'm tall too, so I get it.
Yeah, well, I'm like 5'10", so, and I'm stocky build and 120 kilos in high school, so it wasn't the slimly feminine body I would have hoped for, put it that way. So I think it was like the end of year 12, which is like the end of the high school certificate for us in Australia, the last year before university. I kind of just got to a point where I realized I didn't want to keep being this person anymore. And I actually found something called the Muscle Hackers Anabolic Nutritional Strategy, the man's diet. Which is kind of a bit odd, I think. But essentially it was a ketogenic diet. And what was really interesting about it, this was well before I started to really understand the biochemistry of what was going on. But, you know, there was a lot of talk about it being unlimited fat intake. Fat can't be stored as fat. You need insulin. So it was very, very much the carbohydrate insulin hypothesis. And I say hypothesis because it's not a model. It's not true. It's a fairy tale. But that's another whole rabbit hole I can go down. But I followed that for a little while, and I'm very much like you. You know, when I first started, I'd have some higher fat foods, but when I wasn't actively trying to eat fattier foods, I kind of just naturally gravitated towards lower fat meat options and non-starchy vegetables. You know, you just kind of, that felt right, if that makes sense. And, you know, unsurprisingly to me now, with the lens of what I understand about nutrition now, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Of course, I'm going to find those foods more satisfying because it's exactly what my body needs. You've got protein, salt, nutrients, you know, so those things are more satisfying. And it's also unsurprising that I lost a whole bunch of weight very, very rapidly because I wasn't eating everything else that I didn't need. So it worked, right? But it was kind of just like a luck thing. I'd always just kind of put it down to keto working. I then got bitten by this whole, 19-year-old Ella, suddenly thin and attractive, wants to keep kind of like building on this, kind of finding out a new identity of not being the fat girl anymore. I'm now, without being arrogant about it, you're suddenly feeling desirable, of thinking there's nice things about you, and you kind of want to like leverage that in some ways. And that kind of pushed me down the bodybuilding path. So I started wanting to compete, and really getting bitten by the fitness bug. I ended up doing a comp prep. So I went with a coach who I also now know was woefully underqualified. Ended up having me on starvation level calories, like I'm talking sub 1,000 calories per day for over 2 months. Twice daily cardio sessions, plus my weight training that normally go through it. And you lose your menses, you lose, your sanity, really.
Yeah.
And that was really the genesis of what eventually became an eating disorder. So I followed a quote unquote healthy bodybuilding diet, so balanced diet, quote unquote. Prepped the stage, got up on stage, didn't win, got judged for my physique, felt bad about myself after 4 months, 5 months worth of work. And then you kind of just dumped in this mental cesspool, if you will, where you're being judged and not found to be enough, right? You have a terrible relationship with food. You have a terrible relationship with your body. It's getting fatter very quickly because you need to put on fat after a competition. You know what I mean? This is before, the idea of reverse dieting was really vogue in fitness. So it becomes like this perfect storm to really undermine your relationship with your body and your relationship with food. And that was kind of my exit point from my first competition. After that, I still stuck around in fitness, and I traveled through a lot of different diets, trying different things. What I now know was the eating disorder that I developed got progressively worse. I never called it an eating disorder at the time. It ended up turning into full-blown anorexia. So I never actually was hospitalized or anything, but I was starving myself when I did eat. I was purging, so that was, bulimia on top of it as well. And it just got really messy. It's a very dark part of my life, and it's like I don't mind talking about it, but it's always a little bit prickly to kind of bring up every time. And I know
Oh, we were talking a bit before just about how messy it can be, and all it makes me think about is like how many people could be prevented from dealing with food addiction, food issues, and all of this if we only understood what we do now, which is like, when your body's not getting the nutrients it needs, it will never feel satisfied. And
Yep.
I think of all the people who go through experiences of like, I hear about people, I've had people on the podcast who would have like out of control binges and I've read stories like that where they would just eat like for hours and hours and hours, everything in their fridge, everything in their cupboard. And, then maybe go exercise for like 7-8 hours in the gym, and other behaviors. And I'm thinking about it from the perspective I know now, where like the poor body is starving of nutrients. And we know now when we look at obesity, it's often starvation. We're in this environment where we are overfed and undernourished, and the body is just craving so badly those essential amino acids, those minerals, essential fats, so badly. And most of the food that, people tend to binge on are not like steak and, nutrient-rich keto foods and healthy foods. They're all those processed, ultra-processed and refined foods that have all these additives in them. They make them addictive, stimulating, excitatory, and are totally devoid of what we need, that actual protein. And I think about it now, like, what a shame it is that so many men and women go through that and experience that, and what a dark place it is, like you said. And yet, they are in this purgatory because their body just needs to get what it needs, and you're being signaled constantly to engage in these behaviors, and it's just looking for satisfaction. If only people knew that, like, they could avoid going through all that.
I mean, I feel like this analogy that I'm about to give is a little bit overly reductive, like it's a bit too simple, but I kind of see it, you know, as things that your body needs and things that your body wants, or like a push and a pull, if you will. You know, and I see like the need for nutrients, the need for protein, for amino acid, for salts, things like that. They are like, if you'll excuse a militarism, they are mission critical components.
Yes.
Like if you don't have that, like you're not getting out of bed tomorrow, you're not having a successful hunt, your tribe will actually starve to death and like not passing your genes. Like these are critical things you need to have, right? So they're the needs, right? And then you have like the wants. Like your body always wants extra energy, because like it never wants to be like, yeah, don't worry, I've got like 2 days of supply on me, I'm okay. No way. It wants months worth of a safety net, right? So, you know, the reason I use need and want specifically is because a need stops once you've fulfilled your need. You know, and protein and those nutrients, that's exactly how they act. And I can link research that looked into energy density and satiety and nutrient density and a whole bunch of things that kind of led me to this conclusion. But the long and the short of it is that we are constantly hungry for protein, for nutrients, for salts, up until we've hit the point where we've met our requirements, our needs, right? Then they don't really satiate us any extra than just eating food. You know what I mean? So like we're hungry, we could go without. You know what I mean? Like I can keep eating or I can just stop. We're fine. You know, we become ambivalent towards it. It's just food. Whereas a want, you know, you don't ever stop wanting more money. You know what I mean? Like why do you think there are people who are filthy rich trying to make more money?
Right.
You know, or, you know, in a case much more close to home, like one doesn't ever really stop wanting ice cream. You reach a point where it's either like I'm about to throw up, or you know, my tub is empty. So it's very much the same way. You know, our body constantly wants energy, whether that is fat, whether that is carbohydrates. It's irrelevant. It always wants a surplus because that's safe. So the way I kind of see nutrition in its most basic components is you want to give your body what it needs and give it a little bit of what it wants to support your activity and what you're doing. But it's like a child. You don't overindulge a child just because it's screaming at you that it wants a lolly. No, that's not how this works at all, honey. You know, it's if you've earned a treat, then I'll give you something that you want. But I'm going to make sure you've always got what you need.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that analogy. It's really great. I always think about, you know, how we're programmed in our physiology and our biochemistry, and how we're programmed, you know, for survival. And you take us from, you know, our initial days surviving prehistorically, our cavemen and women days, and you take that wiring that we have, where if you would go out and hunt an animal and kill it, you have this thing called limbic hunger, which is activated, you know, as soon as you have a bite of two of food, you just want to eat and eat and eat and eat until you're full, but sometimes beyond that, because you don't know when you're going to have another opportunity. And so we're wired in that way, you know, to fulfill our needs, like you said, maybe overcompensate a little. You take a person like that, a human being like that, and drop them from an environment of scarcity and unpredictability and variable, you know, access to resources, into this modern day environment where you can't walk 10 feet outside without having some kind of access to convenience food. And, you know, we'll have so many situations where we'll be hijacked by our own physiology that just is programmed this way, you know. And like restaurants know these things, like they have appetizers on the menu because they know once you have a bite of food, you're going to be hungrier, and you're probably
well, that's why there's breadsticks on a table, you know, because
yes,
guess what? You start eating, you salivate, you're
they're free, free breadsticks and stuff. You know, you're more likely to gonna, you know, want to eat a bigger dinner, have dessert maybe, and it's triggering that limbic hunger, right? And it's, yeah, I love the way you put it in those two things. So what was the first thing that sparked your interest? You know, you were, after recovering, like coming out of that first bodybuilding competition, and then like where did you get from there and dealing with some disordered eating from there to kind of coming across like keto and high protein and all of this stuff?
Yeah, so real talk for a second. No one really ever is ever truly recovered from an eating disorder. You can have it in remission. You can spend the rest of your life in remission and never have another symptom, but it is always there. And you know, I mean, again, real talk. Like for example, I'm at the point now where I'm getting so lean, it's actually gross. Like I don't like how lean I am now, but there is still a dark part in the back of my head who's still telling me, no, just keep under eating. You're fine. Like this is a good thing. You're in control. Your body is going in a good direction. You should feel good about yourself. You're making good choices, you know, and I know that there are lies, but I would be lying to you if I didn't say that they're there, because they very much are.
Right.
And I suppose the only difference between now and back then is that I have the courage to be able to admit that I have a problem. You know, like, hi, I'm Ella, and I'm addicted to food. Kind of, you know.
That's the first step, though. Like a lot of people, you know, the obstacle is they don't realize that they are food addicts or sugar addicts, and because they don't realize that, they can't get to the next step.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm going to put this right out here, and I want this to be bold, and I want it to be a call to action to people listening to this. If you are sitting here and you're thinking to yourself that I did not have control, or I did not feel in control of my food eating yesterday, today, a week ago, you have a food addiction, or you have a problem with your relationship with food. Now, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Like, I have a problem with my eating. I would argue most of the Western world clearly has a problem with their eating too, you know, but until you admit that there is that problem and you take ownership of doing something about it, you're going to be stuck in that hole where you're feeling powerless and you are feeling like you cannot control your body composition, where food is scary. You know, you might look amazing, but you don't trust your hunger signals. Until you acknowledge that that is a problem, you're going to be stuck there for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think that is so powerful. And, you know, one of the reasons I'm so thankful for Carnivore, so when I first tried it out, I had the first experience, two really remarkable things happened. The first was I didn't feel bloated in order to feel full. Like I didn't really ever understand what fullness was. And I thought it was only the stomach stretch. So I would always eat until my stomach would stretch and I would feel like, you know, stuffed, like I would volume eat. It was the first time that so at the time when I kicked off Carnivore, I was doing high protein experiments. So the highest I did was like almost 200 grams of protein. And, you know, for me, that was a lot, going from, you know, like I was vegetarian for 17 years, then keto, you know, you're always moderating your protein quite a bit. And I felt so stuffed just eating that, like Thanksgiving stuffed, but I didn't have the stomach stretch and I didn't have that bloating and discomfort. And yet I felt satisfied like I never had before. And it's been that way for me every single day of living this lifestyle. Like I just feel this complete satisfaction, and it'll be to the point where, like, before a meal, like I'll get my favorite thing, which is beef brisket.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
I get it quite often. I just got a smoker because I really, really love it. And I'll have the brisket and I get so satisfied from it that after I'm sitting there and I'm like, V, like you can have as much brisket as you want. And I'm like, talking to myself, I'm like, I legit, like, I can't. Like, it's not even appealing anymore. All I want to do is, like, wrap it up and put it away. I'm like, thank you. You were delicious, but, like, I don't even want to look at you. Never had that experience with any other kind of food. Like, my entire life, I was always, like, finishing my husband's potatoes on his plate, like, you know, if you would offer
and feeling bad about that. And feeling bad about it.
Feeling horrible about that. Like, he doesn't even want them, and I'm like finishing his plate, and he would like always know at the end, like I'd be eyeing, like, you know, like his plate, and he'd like save me a little, you know. It's like, but then after dinner, if you offered me more, like, I would never, there was no point where I reached that sense of satisfaction where I didn't want to look at it. And that I experienced some of that with low carb and keto, but carnivore was like next level. And that started to go back to relationship with food. That to me was the first like real experience of a healthy relationship with food, where it's like you're eating to live and not living to eat.
Mm-hmm. I'd say that not everyone comes to that relationship right away with carnivore. You know, there's a lot of, I suppose everyone comes into any extreme approach with baggage, right? Like, no one just goes, you know what, I love my diet, let's just give up everything that isn't me. You know what I mean? Like, no one comes to us from that perspective. Everyone has a problem that they're hoping carnivore will solve for them. So it's going to be a common occurrence, I think, where people have bad relationships with food, looking, you know, either to lose weight or looking to heal that relationship, or, you know, things like that. And I think it's an unreasonable expectation for people to think that you can just eat carnivore and then suddenly that will work, because that's probably not really what's going to happen. You know, you're going to get a lot of benefits potentially, but I don't think it's going to be that fairy tale story that you think it will be either. You know, I think.
Well, did you have, like, what was your experience? So, like, when you first, like, at what point did you start doing carnivore, and like, what was your experience with it?
So I started carnivore, I think would have been July or August 17 or 18. I can't remember which year it was. I'm going up on 2 years in August, so that must have been 18. I think it would have been about the same time as you, maybe just a little bit before. I mean, it doesn't really matter anyway. Yeah. So I originally actually came at it from a place of curiosity, because I'd had clients talk about it. I'd seen it on some articles online from Bitcoins. And like, I kind of palmed it off as just being really stupid. But then there was secretly, there was kind of like a little part of me is like, oh, I really like steak. Like, oh, I just eating steak. Like, this is great. And if I'm more honest, when I was reading about it, I was reading about people who were having effortless weight loss. You know, and again, you know, the little demon in the back of my head was just sitting there going like, yes, you will lose weight. You know, so I was kind of drawn to it from that side as well. So originally I kind of approached it actually from a low-fat carnivore approach. And I was doing, I was still counting calories, I was still meal prepping, I was still doing all of those kind of things at the start. And bottom line up front, again, for everyone who's listening, that was a bad move. I should have just cut those behaviors away and stuck with low protein. But, you know, these control-based behaviors, they take a lot of time for you to slowly unpack and like to release control and feel safe doing that. So, you know, I suppose also just try and be kind to myself. But I read a lot of stuff at the same time about high-fat carnivore and people bringing a lot of their baggage from doing high-fat keto into now carnivore. They're like, you know, well, we should only eat fatty meats, and we should actually try to eschew eating leaner meats for the same reasons that we do that if we're on keto, right? And I still hadn't really healed the relationship that I wanted to with food in the early days. And a lot of people kind of just gave that away. It's like, oh, you're not eating enough fat. That's your problem. You know, the problem was I was still using MyFitnessPal every day to measure my food, actually. Thank you. But, you know, I was kind of convinced that it was the fat intake and my body wasn't getting what it needed out of it. It didn't really gel with my understanding of the science, but when you're kind of in like that desperate place to solve a problem, you just like, I just want to try things. So I did, and I got fat, essentially. I ate high-fat meat and I got fat. No surprise. You know, I was just eating too many calories. And that kind of put me in a bit of a hard spot because I enjoyed carnivore, but the low-fat approach didn't really solve my food addiction. And the high-fat approach, sure, I wasn't thinking about food, but I didn't feel in control of my body and my eating because I was getting fat. So like I'd lost. And I was kind of like, I'm really stuck in a bit of a dark place. I ended up going back to a low-fat approach just because I kind of dived into the research and my own understanding again. I'd kind of found the work of Ted Naiman, a lot of what he was saying kind of confirmed with my own bias. I was looking at the work by Jose Antonio, Dr. Lehman, people like that, who are looking at kind of like the effects of protein on body composition. And I kind of came to the conclusion of two things. First of all, I really liked eating meat. One, I really liked eating meat. Two, I knew that eating a high protein approach was much more effective for body composition. And three, I needed to keep my energy intake to within a certain limit. And I was probably eating about, 2 kilos of meat a day. So it's about, 4 or 5 pounds. And I realized for me to eat high protein, eat only meat, and eat enough energy, I probably needed to eat meat that was about 97 to 93% lean, right? So I was looking at chicken breast, beef topside, turkey, kangaroo, really lean meats. And I just started eating those. And at first I was actually eating like 400 500 gram meals because again, I hadn't given up the control yet.
Right.
And I was kind of stuck in this, like that mindset. And don't get me wrong, I was getting amazing body composition results. So this is around about March last year, which is when I think we would have started following each other on Twitter. And I'm posting the photos of just being like huge shoulders, veins everywhere. And it's like, I've never achieved results like that ever.
I love those posts. You were like, be the predator, not the prey. I was like, this girl is badass.
So, obviously I was getting great results and I was still overly, thinking about food. But what I found is that I wasn't counting calories and my body composition was improving. So all of a sudden I was like, I felt safe in this diet. You know what I mean? And then feeling safe in the diet translated as like, well, if I wanted more than 5 pounds, and then it's okay. And if I wanted less than 5 pounds, then that's totally cool too. And 4 meals a day that were exactly a pound each or 500 grams each turned into about a pound a meal whenever I was hungry, and then that turned into however much I wanted to eat at any one meal whenever I was hungry. And it's gotten to the point now where I naturally tend to eat a meal around 10 o'clock. It's somewhere between 1 and 2 pounds. And I'll have another meal at, 5 to 7 o'clock at night. And that'll be another 1 to 2 pounds. If I'm trying to lose weight. Sorry?
Same for me.
Yeah, you just, once I gave up the need for control, and felt safe, and that's what carnivore did for me. It made me feel safe in my diet.
Yeah.
Then everything else just kind of fell into place. Like the control that I needed to ease the anxiety I had around my body and around my eating, was no longer relevant. It wasn't helping me feel any better in my life anymore. It was actually making me feel worse. It took a long time to heal through that, but you do eventually make it out the other side. And that's why I say to people, if you are coming in with the same baggage that I did, that you're hoping to heal your relationship with food, don't race that. Understand that, this is a hard topic. It's something it's painful to go through. If you need a plan to start off with, do that. Learn to trust the diet, learn to trust your body's satiety signals again, because guess what? They do actually work. You know, when you give it what it needs, it will tell you when you've had enough. But you need to learn to trust that before you can let go of everything else. Experiences where the psychologists, the people trying to aid our recovery, fed us things like cookies and cupcakes and, highly refined, crappy food. And I can kind of understand the logic in some ways. They're trying to make us not fear those foods by kind of exposure therapy. But the truth is, it actually has the opposite effect. When we eat those foods, we gain weight, which means that we no longer trust that we can eat foods without getting fat. And because we don't trust that anymore, we don't trust that we can eat without counting, which means you're reinforcing the same behaviors that you're actually trying to stop us from doing.
Right. And those are all foods that are obesogenic. They are, really energy rich. There's barely any actual nutrients in them, that if you do eat a muffin or a cupcake, you might feel like a momentary period of satisfaction from that, but you're not going to have any real deep, physiological satisfaction. And then obviously your blood sugar is going to rise and fall and make you feel horrible after. And all you can think about is, what's the next thing that I can eat, so I can stop thinking about food. And
I'm at a conference at the moment. I actually drove back from the conference 2 hours so I could be here to see you, because I really wanted to.
So
and I'm driving back at like another 2 hours at like 1 o'clock this morning.
Oh, you're amazing.
The conference tomorrow. No, I really wanted to chat, but it's actually really funny because I get very insular, probably the same as you with my eating. Like meat is my normal. Like I'd go out and it's just like, it's just meat. Like, it's all I'm eating. It's easy. But in the conference, they're bringing sausage rolls and pies and scones with cream and strawberries and jam. And they've got like little cookies and they've got like fudge squares or whatever else, right? And I'm watching these people and like, I'm like looking at them and I'm counting how many calories they would have been eating approximately. And then looking to see how long before they're satisfied again, right? Now, like they're commenting on what I'm eating at the mess, which is like the military like restaurant, if you will, that's military food, right? And I'm piling on the meat, I'm grabbing eggs, and I'm grabbing like a bit of cheese or whatever else. I'm putting it all on the plate, right? And everyone's commenting on what I'm eating because there's nothing to eat. But then I'm sitting there watching. It's like for breakfast, they'll have a bowl of cereal, 2 eggs, and a couple of slices of bacon, and that's half your daily energy needs right there. Then we spend the whole morning sitting down. You've done no exercise. Come to morning tea and you're eating 3 croissants, 2 cookies, and a scone. You know what I mean? Like you're actually now gaining weight today. Congratulations, you've overate your needs. We then go eat lunch. Then we get an afternoon tea. And then they go eat dinner and they have a couple of beers or a couple of wines for dinner. And like I'm sitting there looking at it and like, why are you commenting on what I'm doing? Like I have abs.
Yeah.
Like and how is it normal to like, what kind of hunter-gatherer society could potentially like, whoa, Steve, I think it's time to stop. It's currently 3:32 p.m. and I haven't had an afternoon snack. Like pull out their Tupperware and start eating mid-hunt. Like that doesn't happen. I don't know. It's just,
that's hilarious. Yeah, it just shows how brainwashed and acculturated we are to what the norms of eating should be and what they should look like. I mean, I still can't, like I posted my tomahawk ribeye, on Instagram, and it's just a knee jerk. People, like this one lady commented like too much cholesterol, and it's like, it's this knee jerk reaction. Like she has to write that. Like we're so programmed to think that. And
she's heard it a million times, and she has actually, I'm willing to bet literally everything I own that particular person hasn't actually read the research on meat intake versus cholesterol. And she might be right, maybe that is what the research says, but she hasn't research that herself, right? She's just heard a bunch of people say it, and now she thinks she knows it, so she's just going to parrot it back to someone. You're not educated. I'm sorry, you're not. All you're doing is repeating something else someone else heard, and you're taking credit for it. That's not intelligence. That's a 3-year-old can parrot. So,
but I mean, people looking at you, they should look at you and be like, I'm going to go hit the meat bar and do what you're doing. Like, people should see that. And like, I'm surprised they even comment, like looking at how fit you are.
Oh, thank you.
Like if you were obese and doing that, I could see why but then actually it'd be inappropriate to say anything. But if you were not as fit and you were doing that, like, and people would comment, it'd be like, okay, but clearly they can see what you're doing, but it's still that knee jerk, right?
Well, and again, I mean, let's look at some long-term carnivores. So I've been doing this 2 years. I actually look younger now than what I did beforehand, right? I'm 30. You look gorgeous, I mean, I look, Sean Baker, you look at a whole bunch of other people who are following it, and they look amazing.
He looks like could be 40. Like, he looks really young.
Look at both of us. I can see through your face. You're very lean. I'm certainly not fat. So, like, okay, maybe there is something to this. I've had my blood work done, and I've come back being perfect across the board. In fact, actually, that's not quite true. My urea was elevated, which is not surprising. I'm eating a lot of protein. That's a thing. Go, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, now that I'm looking at it from the perspective of everything I've learned about this way of eating and biochemistry, I really believe that humans have been aging at an extremely accelerated rate because of this high carb diet that we've all been told to eat, and that we're aging so much faster than we should be from the oxidation of fuel causing all these, DNA mutagens. And obviously there's other factors, or environmental factors and all of that. But I really believe that this high carb food pyramid that all of us sort of in Commonwealth countries follow is just aging us much quicker. And you see it in carnivore groups. People are going from gray to having their color in their hair back. Like, they're reversing. I mean, I've seen on keto women go from menopause to menses again. Like, but on carnivore, you're seeing that. And I think it's amazing to see, like, well, maybe we don't have to be aging at such a rapid rate.
One of the things that I've been thinking about, really wanting to try and really nut out, and I want your feedback, but I'd love your listeners' feedback too. Is I think there are so many voices within the fitness space, all some people just kind of trying to help, some people kind of screaming into the void because they want to make sales, and I have nothing wrong with people doing that. Everyone needs to eat meat, and trust me, I like steak too. But I guess what I'm asking is, I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to be able to look at new ways of getting that information out to people, of doing that education piece. And I think that's something that we're doing well. Particularly in the last 24 months, I think we've really picked up that kind of messaging within the keto world, if you will, about how to succeed in this effectively. But I really want to understand how we can communicate to people, like, the knowledge and the thousands of hours of reading that we do, and the communication and the passion that we've got, and kind of like transport it into their brains in a way that makes sense.
Right.
Is it us having these conversations and backwards and forth? Is it, us doing, 2-minute videos where we're covering complex topics? Is, rapid fire shots? Is it, these are the kind of questions I want to know.
I really believe, unfortunately, that people have to be ready for the information. And
that's very true.
It's like you won't see it, like, until you're ready. It's like when the student is ready, the teacher arrives. Like, I think the best you can do is just keep putting out the info. And when people will line up with it, you plant seeds here and there, but people have to be at that point where they're ready to allow that for themselves. And then when they are, they'll find, you know, their way to this information. But I think the only thing we can do is like just keep talking. I mean, like Dr. Sean Baker reached you all the way across the world, and you know, he affected so many people around the world just from being on Joe Rogan. And you know, the newspaper article just came out in Australia, you know, with a huge page on him. Like, it's amazing that the information is getting out there. I think we just have to keep, you know, putting the message out. I really want to ask you before we conclude, what tips do you have for women who, like me, want to build their lean mass and, you know, build muscle and increase their lean mass?
All right. So there's a couple of things that come to mind. I want to keep this really brief for everyone. The first is that as you grow, first is you need to train like a boy. There's no difference between training for hypertrophy between a male and a female. You know, we're all just humans, rather big humans or slightly bigger humans, and we all function the same. So don't be afraid to get chalk on your hands, get a little bit dusty, you know, lift some heavy things and kind of embrace that. Like, at the end of the day, it is empowering as a woman to get into the gym and have people like, holy shit, I can't believe she just lifted that. I mean, that feels good. And it's scary and terrifying when you start. But you know what? Once you feel confident in that gym and you're making progress, it will bite you. So don't be afraid to get in there. Be that, you know, be the predator in the gym. You know, be the person that is like, even if you're only just starting, have that kind of, think like an athlete and you'll become an athlete. Yeah, I suppose that what I'm trying to get at with that one. The second piece is that, although I want you to train like a male, prioritize like a female. So muscles will respond to training volume proportional to the amount of volume that you give them. So what that means is if you train lots of biceps, your biceps are going to grow more than if you only do a little bit of legs, right? Now for females, most people want to look better naked. And, you know, there is a aesthetic that I suppose that most females kind of go for. And I suppose my advice to you would be become aware of what that aesthetic is for you and develop your training around that specifically. So if you're the kind of person who is quite boxy, as an example, and you admire women who have thin waists and big bums, as an example, then, you know, potentially you might look at a training program that was more leg specific, and you might do, you know, 3 days or a bit more volume in your leg and a little bit less through truncal work, which might widen you. On the other side, then, you know, maybe you like that hyper-functional, hyper-athletic looking, you know, CrossFit babe look where you're just ripped and shredded. In which case, you know, a lot of ab work, a lot of upper body, so you're getting like, you know, the delts popping and you're getting the collarbone coming through. You know, maybe if that's your sort of aesthetic, then you get in there, do a lot of overhead pressing, do a lot of chest press. I guess what I'm trying to say with this is be aware of, work towards your goal, but know what your goal is too. Right? And be intelligent about how you design your programs. And if you don't know, engage someone like, I don't know, say Vanessa, who may be able to help you in getting a program that will take you towards those goals. The third piece is that there is more to training than rocking up at the gym. Right? If you're getting into the gym and you don't know what you're doing, you've already wasted your session, go home. You're better off actually planning what you're going to do for the next one. You'll get more out of it in the long run, right? I articulate that through what I call mesocycles, and then each mesocycle is broken down into, you know, training programs which achieve a specific end state. So at the moment, the people who are with Keto Alpha, and shameless plug, if you want some free training programs, join the group. It's up to you. I give them away for free.
Is that on Facebook as Keto Alpha?
Yeah, the Keto Alpha Alliance. So all of the training, I've got the 2020 mesocycle plan. You can actually see every training program that I've got this year laid out.
Definitely going to join that.
Yeah, well, please come. I mean, we come through, I release videos and I talk through the training program and the exercises. So it's kind of like coaching, except I just do the exercise component. And then, you know, if you want nutrition stuff, then that's a little bit more time for me, and then we can, you know, that's what I do. But not making a sale. But no, yeah, have a plan. So know what your mesocycles are. Have a training program that is nested underneath that and is working towards goals. You know, so like, you know, develop your base strength. You know, when I spoke about HPO, you know, develop your strength, and then increase the amount of reps that you can do with that strength into like the volume phase, and then conduct more volume with it. So you're now in hypertrophy and you're growing, and then take a rest, and then you repeat the cycle as like a, you know, a base example. You know, so if you don't know what you're doing, work that out first, because everything else hinges on you knowing what your training program is before you get there and tracking your results. If you're not writing down every single week what you lifted the week before and beating those numbers in one way or another, then you're not progressing, and I think you're wasting your time in the gym. You're not training, you're exercising.
Right. Do you tend to do things a lot to failure?
Yes, but only when it's got a purpose. So for most people, honestly, I would take it, if you're doing 8 to 12 reps, I would just stop with 1 or 2 reps left in the tank.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today, Ella. I love getting to chat and hang out with you. And I would love to have you back on the show again for round 2.
Yes, please. Yeah, I'll definitely stay up until midnight again for you and drive 2 hours either way.
Thank you so much, Ella. You're the best.
No worries, Vanessa. See you soon.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this part of the episode with Ella. It was such a blast to chat with her. I hope that some of your questions were answered. She has so much amazing expertise when it comes to body recomposition, and love getting to have her on the show with us. It's truly a privilege. And to get to do live videos with her, the Ask Me Anything episodes that we do are over on Instagram. If you want to join us live, you can join over there and check out my feed on Instagram to see when we do those together, the Ask Me Anything episodes, where you can ask any question that you have about body recomposition from an expert who truly has done and mastered body recomposition herself. So I hope you guys enjoyed that episode today with Ella. If you're looking for any of the other parts, you can go back and find those and listen to them as well. Now, if you want to try out doing keto with me as your coach and guide, you can head over to ketogenicgirl.com, see all of the meal plan programs that I have there, which are modeled after how I personally eat, how I got my body composition down from close to 40% down to 21%. And I'm here to be your guide and help coach you with any questions that you have as we go along in our members Facebook group. So any of the meal plans that are at ketogenicgirl.com also come with my coaching and guidance and support in our members group. And you can head over to Ketogenic Girl to check those out, or send me a message over on Instagram. Send me a DM with your goals about which meal plan would be best for you. And I would absolutely love to have you in the program. Would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed today's episode, send it to someone that you think would enjoy it too. Leave me a rating, a review, and subscribe so you get notifications when I put out new episodes. So until the next episode, wishing you a fat-fueled rest of your day. Bye for now.